We're speaking with the another legendary softballer from the 1970s, Elaine Smith. She's one of the players that came out of the gold medalist team in 1974. That game where they won, the Belize softball team won a gold in the Central American and the Caribbean Games. Elaine has a large array of accolades to go to her name, but right now today we will speak to her about that specific period. Elaine, I want to ask you first of all, what was that homecoming like when you guys won that gold medal? I remember watching that moment and the spirit, the passion that was there. Describe for us briefly what was that moment like for you.
Totally unbelievable. I remember it was like a national holiday. Kids were out of school. We kind of flew over the country a bit. Everybody was out to greet us. It was totally unbelievable. I can't even describe the feeling that we had coming back and being received by the entire country the way we did, you know. And we got a chance to really feel how appreciated the country was of what we accomplished in Santa Domingo. So that was very exciting.
The game, the specific game, the last game where you guys won your championship, won the gold. Describe that game for us, if you may.
Well, you know, it's always, you go to the games always thinking you're going to win. I mean, obviously you go thinking you're going to win, and then, you know, things happen throughout the games. Things happen, plays that you didn't make that you should have made. And then, you know, you fall behind and you have to come back up and score and win. So it's kind of one of those things when that happens, you know, you're like, well, this is amazing. This is like exactly what we came here to do. And so I couldn't tell you, when we jumped up and said that we won and this was the game for the gold, it was unbelievable. It really was.
What were some of the teams that you played with in Belize itself before joining a national selection? Give me some of the teams that you played with before, and what was your softball life like as a teenager?
Well, as a teenager, I started playing softball in Hattieville. I mean, I was one of the product of the Hattieville Hurricane. We moved over to Hattieville, and at that time I played softball with my school. And, you know, we didn't have diamonds. I mean, it was just, you know, we just had to make the diamonds out there. So I started then, knew that this was something I wanted to do. I went to St. Hilda's College and played for the St. Hilda's College secondary team. I was pitching for that team. So, you know, from there I was like, I got to get on one of these big teams. I was admiring the national teams. They were doing the triangular meet, and I admired all those players, and I wanted to be like them. So I joined Loyolans at the time, and I really didn't stay there that long because they had, you know, it's one of those teams that have all these players, you know, you never get to play as a rookie. So from there I went to Raymond Lashley, the coach. He created his own team called Berger 303, and that's where I wound up, and from there I went to the national team.
Berger 303, I remember that team very well, and the awesome noise you guys made at the Rogers Stadium. You know, competition, a very competitive team. What was your favorite position you played on that team? I know that most of the players were all overall. Some could pitch, you know, some could play midfield and all the different parts. But what was your specific area?
My position was pitching and second base. So those, I mean, I'm an all-around player. I can pretty much play any position, but on those teams I pitched and played second base.
Were you also on the national selection that won the game against the United States, the greatest softball team? I think they were called the U.S. Rebels or something like that. Were you on that team?
You know, I had just joined the national team. You're talking about the Orlando Rebels.
Yes.
At that time, and that's when Belize, we had a triangular meet at the time. It was Belize, Jamaica, and Miami. And I came in right on the tail end of the triangular meet and went to a quadrangular meet because I think Bermuda joined, but Belize, Bermuda, Jamaica, and Miami was in there. So I came in right on the tail end of that team. But it was the Orlando Rebels, amazing team. They was winning every game. It was amazing. So I got on the national team right after that.
Very much so. As I was speaking with Glenda Ellis, she mentioned that she was not in the big leagues with you guys. She was a novice coming up at the time when you guys were returning with that great victory from Santa Domingo, right?
Right.
Yeah, on in the gold medal Central American and Caribbean Games. What kind of practice went into the kind of playing that you guys were exemplified? Because you guys were some awesome players that is, for me, second to none. Mm-hmm. I am not seeing that kind of sports, that kind of quality, discipline that you're seeing today in Belize with the new softball players. What went into you guys' practice?
I think we were, diehard players. Everybody wanted to be the best. And then when you had players that were before you, I was looking at the Brenda Johnsons and the Consuelo Dugals and all those girls that was playing before us. We always wanted to be the best. So I think once we made it to the national team, I remember going to school at St. Hilda's College, running to the park at Rogers Stadium in the morning to work out, running back to the house, going to school, running back to the park in the evening, running back to the house. So everything was exercise. And we worked out twice a day and very hard workout. Raymond Lashley and all the coaches at that time, they really worked us out. I remember pitching and I would throw like maybe 200 pitches and Lashley would come over and be like, "Well, Smith, you tired?" And I'd be like, "Yes." He said, "Well, give me another 100 pitches." And I thought, "Oh my God, why did I say yes?" And they better be strikes. So we trained really hard. Yeah, it was fun. We loved it. I wouldn't trade it in for the world.
200 pitches was not good enough for him. He wanted 100 more.
Yes. But he asked you, "Are you tired?" And you'd be like, "Okay, good. I've been pitching over here all day long." So he's going to be like, "Okay, that's good. Do something else." No, let me have another 100 pitches. And and they better be good pitches. You can't just throw them in there. So, but for me, I had it teach me a lot of control because I had to make sure there were strikes or else you'd stay there all day long pitching. So, you had to make it right.
And now I learned about another dynamic pitcher, Elaine Smith, because we heard about the Consuelo Dugals, the Margaret Ushers, my favorite Isoline Heat. I just love that style where she flips the ball front and then brings it back.
Yes.
And now we know of Elaine Smith, the pitcher who Raymond Lashley wanted 100 more pitches after she gave him 200. What kind of support came from your family and friends and the country in a whole throughout your entire softball career? How did your family and friends and the Belizean people in a whole, how did they support you guys in your endeavors?
Totally supportive. Again, like I said, I grew up in Hattieville, so of course, I'm the player from the village, so everybody was totally behind that. And of course, we didn't have television at the time, so games was being announced on the radio. The whole village was always listening. Want to make sure that, okay, well, Elaine made a hit or she scored a game. So, everybody was totally behind it. Family was all there. My dad wasn't so much because I had a scholarship at St. Hilda's College, and he was like, "Well, if you break a leg, you won't be able to, Now I was like, "Well, Dad, don't worry about that." So he never really came to a game until when I made it to the national team. He was like, "That's my daughter," that kind of stuff. But I loved it. My uncle was there, and the rest of the family was totally behind us. So it was awesome. Totally awesome.
And you're one of the players that came from out of the villages. It appears that most of the great players from shooting footages in Belize and going throughout the country, there appears to be some awesome players coming out of the villages. Was that the case during your time?
Yes, that was the case. It's kind of like that's all you have to do. You go to school and you play ball. And I think we had one theater in Hattieville, and it only shows movies once a week or something. And, and then we had all these inter-district competition and villages competition, and so we were playing ball all the time. And then I think what really made us more competitive, because we played with the guys. So we're always playing with the guys and competing with the guys, and and so that's on Sundays, the villages, that's all we did was play ball.
I was trying to also get from you. I remember the MCC grounds and the games that went on at that particular venue. I remember the games with you guys in Jamaica, Belize and Bermuda, Belize and the Bahamas. But one of the teams that appeared to be very, very competitive with you guys was Bermuda. Give us one of those highlights moment that you can remember where you guys were playing Bermuda, both at home and maybe in Bermuda. What was about that team that gave you guys a great challenge?
I think Bermuda, I say they were probably next to the Orlando Rebels, where I think size had a lot to do with it. They were, they appeared to be strong. I mean, they were always hitting home runs. They were fast. They were, I think physically, they probably had a lot more training and than we did. I mean, we trained really hard, but I think they had better fields. I mean, at that time, you know what I mean. So, but overall, they were always one of the tough ones to beat. They were always one of the tough ones.
The games also, your typical inter-district competitions, those were very fun games. Remember going to Rogers Stadium and watching those games. And Michael Finnegan described that he writes about that in the Amandala, and I could wow, man, I remember that particular venue, Rogers Stadium. What was the inter-district softball competitions like, and what was the team that you said you were playing on Virgin 404, but give us the kind of mood at the time that was going on with those games, because it was a very exciting time.
It was exciting. I think besides wanting to be on the winning team, everybody knew that they wanted to get on the national team as well. So, and it was one of those things where you want to be number one, and you do everything to make sure that happens, so that's why those games were so competitive. And I remember going to Belize years later after I came out here, and I was sitting in the dugout with Raymond Lashley, and I was watching the girls, and I was like, Lashley, what happened to these girls? They're not playing like we was playing. And he said, well, they're not passionate. They're not as passionate as we were. And I think that was the thing. We were very passionate about it, and so we worked hard, We worked hard.
Did Berger 404 ever won any of the inter-district softball competitions?
And no, I don't recall. See, what Lashley did with that team, he took all the younger players, because of course, Dunright and all those teams, you have the older girls on there, and they, you have Guineas, and, so he was like, okay, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to break away. I'm going to get all the younger players, and I'm going to mold them and work hard with them. So, I mean, even though we didn't win a championship at that time, but, I mean, he had a team of young, strong players that he was excited about. So we were very competitive.
Elaine, what advice would you give to the young softballers? You have had a chance to go back home in Belize and sit in the mound with Raymond Lashley and watch these young upcoming ballers do their thing. What advice would you give to them as one of the legendary softball players that Belize have ever produced?
Yeah, I'd say just strive to be number one. Try to be your best. Play like you mean it. Play like you want to win. You want to be a champion. You have to dig deep and bring that out. It's like, don't make excuses. I used to cry when it would rain. Because I've worked so hard and I need to play this game, and I always wanted a team that was better than my team. I felt, and I always wanted. So you always want to be number one and be your best. So just work hard. If this is what you want to do, then work out, practice hard, and play hard. One major thing I want to say though is that you play the way you practice, and if you go to the park to practice, play like you would if you was playing. You know, and I've seen players do it all the time. They go, "Oh, this is not a game," so you know they kind of loaf around. But no, we play hard. Practice, or every practice is a game.
We want to thank you so much for giving us this interview. And would you ever, another question, and this is the final one, I kind of had to ask you this. Do you think that Belize will ever be Queens again? Because the name of my documentary is When We Were Queens, describing the level and the quality of softball that you guys were playing. Do you ever think that we will rise to that standard again?
Yes, I do believe that. I know that there are a lot of young players. I think we got to get them, you know, in that younger stage. One of the things that Lashley told me when I asked why the girls weren't playing like we did, and he was saying that a lot of them are distracted, you know, in many ways, and so they didn't have the same desire. So I think if you get, you know, start playing at the you know, in school, when they primary school, you know, you get them then and you train them, and I think definitely we got it. I mean, you know, we've got the ability. This is, you know, Belize has one of the greatest softball teams and a lot of great players right now, so I know we can do it. We definitely can.
Elaine Smith, thank you very much. It was a pleasure talking with you.
Thank you. Appreciate it.